When we read the gospel account of this familiar story of the 10 lepers, we are drawn into the idea of being critical of the 9 who did not come back. We affirm the one who came back, and we begin to make and draw our own conclusions. There is a lot going on in these few verses in Luke's Gospel, chapter 17, verses 11 to 19. And I want us to go straight to the very end of that reading, because I think therein we get the clue as to what Luke is trying to do here as he speaks to his community. He says that Jesus, having seen this man returning, this foreigner, according to Luke, he said, "Get up and go your way. Your faith has made you well." What difference is there between this one and the other 9? They did not hear these words, but this one did. And if we were to look at the language, the Greek, the words used in the Greek, we will get the idea as to why there is this difference. You see, when we read the words as they were on their way, they were healed, the Greek word used, therizo, has to do with their physical well-being, being healed of the disease, being physically made well. Therizo. But the word used in the last verse of this passage, which speaks of your faith has made you well, the word used there is sozo, which is more than just a physical wellness. It is a wellness of the spirit. Healed of spiritual disease and death. Now, how was that possible? What makes this guy so different that he is healed of his spiritual disease more than those who were healed of their physical disease? Luke is making the point that our spiritual wellness, our spiritual wholeness has to do with 3 basic things. That we recognize Jesus, recognize God in what happens in our lives. That we are not led to think or believe that God is removed from our experience in ordinary life. And this one returned to make that point, according to Luke, that he recognized Jesus and the role he played in his healing. That's the first point Luke makes. That spiritual wellness has to do with not only seeing God at work in our lives, but being thankful to God for what happened in our lives. And not to assume that life happens and therefore that's the way it is. That there's something, someone, some being beyond us for which we are thankful, to which we are thankful, to which we are grateful. Recognizing God, but also recognizing that we are called to be thankful for what God has done and does do in our lives. And Luke's third point is this, that because we see what happened in our lives, our wellness, our wholeness happens when we make a new direction happen in our lives, when we make a new turn, when we change our direction. So, recognizing God for what God has been doing in our lives, being thankful for that action of God in our lives, and then endeavoring to make a new kind of direction, a new path, go a different kind of way in our life's journey. That's what contributes to our wholeness. Our using the word sozo, if you will. In the first reading, as we read from the book of Deuteronomy, we hear the writer suggesting the people, God, something has happened in our lives over the years. We can point to the history of how we have done, and we have done rather well. He said, but don't forget the source of that success. Don't forget there's someone, something, some being, some power that stands behind this success. We cannot forget that. And if you remember that, you'll be thankful, you'll be grateful, you'll appreciate what's happening, and you will do what you have to do to keep along that path. But so often we read in the text how they remembered and they thanked God, and then they changed their ways again and reverted to the old way. So even they themselves were not fully well, fully healed, because they had not continued along the path. This man, Luke suggests to us, recognized Jesus, recognized God's power in his life, was thankful, and changed his direction. But we can use that as a good reflection for the day. But I want us to think a bit about the other 9 as to why they may not have experienced or did not experience the wholeness of which Luke speaks. Now, the gospel allows us enough room to speculate, because Jesus asks the question, where are the 9? What has happened to them? And we say they were so ungrateful. Now, I want to, just so you can get an idea, get some cultural lessons here about the ancient Near East at the time and what's happening here. It was quite unusual for someone to say thank you for anything done for them, because they would always be seeing each other, and there would be other times when they would have other things done for them, or they would in turn reciprocate the favors. You know, we sometimes say, well, thank you, and we say, no problem, it's okay. For some of us, you owe me one. We will see you again, and we will make it even. You know, that was how thank you was understood. I will see you again. When it was clear you will not see me again, we will end this encounter. Thank you was appropriate. And the Samaritan was doing what was appropriate, because he knew that saying thanks to Jesus would have been the last time, because he will never again, according to the way they lived, cross paths. So his thank you was a phenomenal kind of thing. It was ending that encounter. So we cannot be so hard on these other 9 because it didn't say thank you. Even Jesus himself is not even there. He asked not with thank you, but with praising God. Right? So he was not about thank you. But let's see why we can speculate as to why these 9 did not experience the complete healing. And maybe it's a study in psychology. Some have suggested that for the first leper, for example, the first of the 9, when he saw that he was made clean, of course, returned to the priest as was required to be given the clearance to go back to society. But when he got back home, going back to family, to the wife and household, he discovered that though he was healed, he had lost his family. So there's no wholeness there for him, can there be? Though, well, physically, he's lost his wife, he's lost family. So there's no real wholeness there for him. But he is healed physically. He wanted his life back fully. And he must have probably cursed his healing because it did not make a difference really in his life. He may have lost. We are just here, my friends, just speculating. And think about that as we look at our own life's journeys and what happens around us. Or think of the second leper who, as he was on his way to the temple, probably saw others as he was before, lepers too, and did not want to be seen around them. He could not go back there. He had no time to go back to them. I must look after myself. I'm healed now and good. Too bad for you. There's no wholeness when I celebrate my wellness and have no regard for those who are where I used to be. No wholeness there is there. Or maybe a third leper may have figured, you know what? I am special. Of all lepers around, Jesus saw us and heard us, and we are a special breed here. We are a special group. And we have some rights. I'm going to go back to work. I should, because I've been healed now by the Messiah, the Master. I have a right to get whatever I may need. I am entitled because I am now well. That too is not wholeness, is there? The fourth leper may have found it hard to transition, to return to what was his new life. He probably felt uncomfortable. How will I rejoin society? How am I going to fit in again? Life is so different. It's so hard. I'd rather be where it was before. It was easier because from now on, they will always see me as the one who used to be a leper. And so one is tormented by the fact that he is not going to transition back well into society. He's not like the others. Or there's that fifth one, perhaps, who did manage to get back into society and was able to work his way back into the system, as it were. But then he felt that within himself that he was not really like the others. He remembered where he was, remembered what he was enduring. He remembered how he was so different and not like the rest of them. Even though I'm with them, I'm not like them. And he sees himself through what he thinks they are seeing. And torment abounds. Though he is physically well, he is tormented by the fact that he is not seen really by them as he would like to be seen. Think of that. Where we see those things happening in our own experiences. Or the sixth one, who wants to devote himself to ensuring that suffering is addressed. Maybe he wants to dedicate his life to a cause. He wants to jump in there and give back to society and do what he can to really make a difference. However, as he endeavors to do this kind of work, it does not happen the way he wants it to happen. It's not really happening. He cannot fulfill really his purpose because something is hindering him from really engaging, even though he wants to do that. And so there's no real wholeness because something is missing. And then there may be another one who figures, but you know what? I will never be around Samaritans again. Been there, I've done that. I will now devote my whole life work to the Jewish community and doing all I can to ensure that they are the best, if you will. I will not be found back there. I will never go around them. And so, what we have, my friends, as I speculate with you, these so-called well individuals who's got something happening underneath that does not speak of wholeness. Whereas the tenth guy seems to have realized that completeness. Because the other 9 were seeing in themselves what they have done, what they can do, where they can be, where they ought to be, how they should be seen. It was me. What am I doing here? Haven't been made well. And did not recognize the place of God in that. And that's where I think Luke wants to take us. Not to condemn them for not returning, but for them to see God is at work. That they can see in their adversity something good can happen still. They are still of worth, still of value. Despite what you may think of me, there's something good about me still. It's not what you think of me, it's what God thinks of me and sees in me and knows about me. That's what makes one whole. What God thinks of me, what not others think. Really. Luke is trying to show us that in the face of healing or illness, there is room for thanksgiving. How many of us are only thankful to God when all works out? We are thankful to God when things work out. But then we have some problems with this God when things aren't going the way they ought to go. That's human. That's the human condition. We are not clear with this God anymore when things aren't going my way. I put it to you, my friends. I put it to us. That it is at those times that we need to allow ourselves to be so free to think that the God who has been good to me when it was good is still the same God who is present even though it may seem as though God is far away. We find it hard to think in those terms. How can I think of a God who is good to me when my husband dies? We cannot understand that. But our wholeness may be realized when we are able to allow God to reveal who God is in the midst even of that adversity. And how is that revealed, for example? Those who rally around us, those who are there for us, those who are walking with us, those who are talking with us, those who are supporting us, those who are listening to us, those who are spending time. This is how we bear witness to God's love in community. You see, God does not operate in a vacuum. God operates when God's people recognize God as present. We look to God even in adversity. Because the leper saw what happened, he returned to God. And praise Jesus. because he saw that God was at work. Do we see God at work in our lives? Harvest is one such time, isn't it? When even though there may be famine someplace else, we can still point as people of faith to a God who blesses us, that we may bless others. The point is that we are whole, not because we give thanks to God for harvest, but we can take it and we can make available to others. As we read in Corinthians, the reading for the epistle, that the people were able to give, to make God's presence and love experience in other people's lives. It isn't about you, my friends. It's about me. It's about God and our seeing God present in our lives. So Luke may well be trying to remind us again from a distance what it means to be whole. You may look physically well. You may walk with your back straight. No cane or glasses, nothing that would betray your health or condition. But once we know, once we understand that God is present with us through this life, once we are thankful and grateful for God's goodness in this life, once we are endeavoring to make a difference as we change our direction and walk in the way of God, then our wholeness is happening. Our salvation is being realized. Our liberation, our freedom in God is being experienced. And at the altar, we do just that. As we give God thanks, we remember that in death, He gave us life. We remember that it was in His death that He gave us a hope for tomorrow. We remember. Thanksgiving is about remembering. Thanksgiving is about seeing God at work in our lives. Thanksgiving is about recognizing that we will make a new turn. My praise that as we give thanks to God in this season of harvest and Thanksgiving as a church and as a community, we will see our wholeness, not necessarily in the physical well-being, which is important, but our wholeness, recognizing that God is alive and at work in our lives. That we are thankful for the blessing of being able to see that. And we endeavor by God's grace, warts and all, to make the transition in a new direction. When we embark on that journey, we will hear the words of Jesus. Your faith has made you whole. So.